if she did destroy him, hopefully she burned him.
Just burned every...
Yeah, fryer.
Oh my god.
Fry and tuck. I'm tired. Just in case you didn't know, I'm Matthew.
And I'm Brian.
And this is Road Trip Recap. Spoilers up ahead, as today we talk about the Hell House episode of Supernatural.
We're also going to be taking a look at tulpas and imaginary friends in our modern society.
All right, buckle up and let's go. Our episode today starts out 2 months ago in Richardson, Texas, which, fun fact, is actually the hometown of a small actor by the name of Jensen Ackles, I believe.
I don't think I'm familiar with his work.
Well, he's been in a few things.
Okay.
He's actually going to be on the next series, or next season of The Boys coming up.
Oh, sweet.
He was also in Days of Our Lives. Yeah. Anyways. So...
Among other things.
Yeah. A few things here or there. I think he was on Smallville, My Bloody Valentine, stuff like that. Anyways, so we have a group of friends, they're checking out this old creepy house, and, the one friend, Craig, is talking about, like, the ghost stories that he heard from his cousin on how it's haunted and, all this stuff. And, side note, just to express my disappointment, I've been going to like the same site to see which actors play different characters in different episodes, and the website informed me that there were no reoccurring actors in this episode, but that is not true. So we have, I believe, the one that I'm referencing, she's just known as First Teenage Girl. She's played by Britt Irvin, and she comes back later as the angel Muriel.
Oh.
I think she helps Castiel later. I don't remember the specifics on that, but she comes back as an angel. So this could be another one of headcanon, because she doesn't die in this episode. They go into the house. They're getting told this ghost story. They end up happening upon this dead body that's already there. So that girl's fine. So she could go on to be an angel later on. Like, she could be a vessel. Like, maybe happening upon that dead body, traumatized her and got her into religion or whatever, and then she vesseled herself.
Yeah.
We cut to 2 months later. We got Sam and Dean. They're driving along. Sam's sleeping. Dean's driving, getting bored, and so he decides to just start screwing with Sam. So he, sticks a spoon in his mouth, takes a picture, and then turns the radio up. And that begins their prank war for this episode. So...
Those escalate quick.
So we get, Dean's like, tell me again, what is it that we're doing? Sam's talking about what he had found out, because he knew they were going to be going through Texas, so he found some local paranormal sites, and he found one about this house. And he's like, well, what's the name of it? Hellhoundslair.com. Ah, yes. Live from Mom's basement. So, already kind of like, we'll see. Which, this is kind of another episode where Dean calls it at the beginning, and he's just like, I don't think it's our thing. And it originally wasn't.
No.
So they go into town and they're investigating to find out what happened, and they get a different story from everybody. From the colors of the walls to the color of the dead girl's hair to whether or not she was dead or still alive. Like, everyone has a different story. The only thing that remains constant is they heard about this house from their friend Craig. So they go to talk to Craig. He's working at a record store, and get the story on old man Mordecai and how he had 2 daughters and killed them and then hung himself, and so now he preys on young girls that come into the house or whatever.
Basically the typical haunted house fair for any local site that might be haunted.
Right. Anyways, Sam and Dean, they go to investigate the house, and there's graffiti everywhere, different like occult-looking symbols, and there's one symbol in particular that Dean finds very familiar, but he can't quite place where it's from. He knows he's seen it somewhere, but he just can't quite figure it out. Side note, at the beginning and end of this episode, they play different songs from Blue Oyster Cult.
Mm-hmm.
Spoilers to the spoilers, but that's what the symbol is. Anyways, they get some other noises going on, and then they run into Ed and Harry. So this is our first instance of meeting what will become as the Ghost Facers.
Ghost Facers.
We face a ghost. I just remember, stay in the kitchen when the kitchen gets hot. Ghost Facers. We face a ghost. Anyways, again. So it is.
Those guys just. When they're in an episode, it's either going to be very annoying or hilarious.
Their full names, you have Harry Spengler and Ben Shapiro. I mean, Ed Zeddemore. Have you ever seen Ben Shapiro? He looks just like the actor that plays Ed.
I'll take your word for it. I can see the similarity. I can see the similarity.
Anyways, so it's Harry Spengler and Ed Zeddemore. Sam and Dean just kind of let Ed and Harry talk. You know, they're talking about how they're the professionals, and like, you know, they're doing all this stuff. They got their EMF. Oh, EMF? What's that? And Dean had already mentioned that there might be some juice going to the power lines, so EMF is useless. But, you know, they're just playing into it and just like, whatever, you know. Again, Dean's kind of like, I don't think this is our thing. They go to do research, nothing's coming up, and then they're heading back to the car, and Sam just kind of is waiting. As Dean gets in, he starts it, and like the wipers are going, the music's blaring. You know, that's Sam's retaliation for the spoon, I guess. I don't.
The spoon and also blaring the music to wake him up.
Yeah, I guess. All right. And so Dean's again like, I think it's a bus. Like, let's just find a bar, have some beers, and just leave it to the locals. So then we cut to later that night where there's more kids at the house, and Jill gets dared to go in because it's either go in and grab a jar from Mordecai's basement or make out with the one guy. And she's like, I'll take the haunted cellar. Which, ow, his ego. But also, she goes down and she ends up getting attacked and getting strung up and hung by Mordecai, which is my second disappointment.
I mean, a person just died, but okay.
Mordecai is played by Nicholas Harrison.
Oh, this disappointment.
Yes.
Yeah, gotcha.
We have seen Nicholas Harrison already because he was also the Rawhead.
Oh.
He also comes back in, it's the one where Sam goes to find his old friend from when they were kids, but she's a monster.
Oh, yeah, the Kitsune.
Yeah.
Or, no, not the Kitsune. It is a fox-esque demon.
Something like that.
Yeah.
Well, I think he plays a cop in that episode, and then in the episode where they resurrect Hitler, he plays Hans in that episode. And yes, later on in a later season, they resurrect Hitler.
Because why not?
I mean, it's supernatural.
Yeah, and that's very supernatural.
So we get, Sam and Dean are back on the case because they're like, oh, what happened? Oh, this girl hung herself. And they're just like, the hell? Like, we checked it out. There was nothing there. I guess we missed something. So they go in to investigate, but there's police patrolling. They don't want people going in there and everything. And so like, how are we going to get in? Well, enter Ed and Harry. And so, as a callback to their namesakes of Spengler and Zeddemore, Dean calls out, who are you going to call? And alerts the police to their presence. And so they go chasing after Ed and Harry. Sam and Dean go into the house, and, they're... Actually, I think this is where the rat shows up. There was no rat earlier. Cut that part out.
Now there's a rat.
Now there's a rat.
Dirty rat.
Because they see the rat. Dean's like, oh, I hate rats. And Sam's like, would you rather it was the ghost? He was like, yeah, actually. Well, and then he shows up.
Then ask and you shall receive.
Yeah. Except it's not a ghost because they shoot it with rock salt. Nothing happens. Well, I mean, kind of. Like, it does its little phasing thing.
Yeah.
But, like, it doesn't do what it should have done.
Which is dissipate completely.
Yeah. And so then they're hightailing it out of there. Well, Ed and Harry had lost the police. And they're heading into the house. And Sam and Dean come running out. They're like, get that thing out of my face. And they got a camera and everything. And, like, they get footage of Mordecai angry and the...
in hot pursuit.
Yeah, but he stops at the house. Like, he doesn't really pursue outside of the house. So then we cut to... they're doing their own recap on what just happened. They're like, I thought he hung himself. Like, did you see his slit wrist? Which, good attention to detail on their part. Like, being attacked, they're like, hey, he slit his wrist.
Oh, look at that.
And they're like, yeah, that doesn't, like, match the legend at all. Like, you know, Dean's like, I know he's supposed to go after girls, so I get why he came after you, but why'd he come after me?
His hair wasn't even long then.
It's kind of.
Long-ish.
Yeah.
But I mean, comparatively.
Fair. And so Sam's like, yeah, I mean, according to the website, wait a minute, they changed it on the website. And so it had changed in the website and had changed there. So, like, okay, well, you know what's going on. And it's at this point, Dean finally figures out that symbol that he's been, like, fretting over because he knows it from somewhere, and he finally figures it out. So they go back to the record store. They reveal to Craig that they know that he was making stuff up.
All urban legends have to start somewhere. And generally, they start with a rumor, with a prank, with some sort of, like, I'm going to scare the ever-loving sweet crap out of somebody.
And that's where this started.
Yep.
So they talk to Craig, find out that, you know, his cousin was in town, and they're just like, hey, let's make up this thing. So they just drew random symbols inside this house that, you know, he knew of this old abandoned house. And so they drew, like, random symbols, some from his cousin's theology textbook from college or whatever. And they just made it all up. It was all fun and games, but now, like, somebody has actually died. And so he's, like, a little torn up over that. Like, he didn't intend for anything to actually happen. He was just having some fun.
Yeah.
So now, you know, they're trying to figure out what's going on now, because it was all made up, but it's not, because they saw Mordecai. So we get to back at the hotel, you know, Dean showing up, and he has some itching powder that he's going to be adding to Sam's clothes as he's in the shower, and Sam starts talking about how he's pretty sure that he knows what it is. It's a tulpa.
It's a tulpa.
Not a tulpa. Anyways, and, you know, Dean's like, of course I know what a tulpa is, but tell me about it. And so it's a Tibetan thought form is what they claim, and that there were 20 monks who focused on a thing so hard that it became real. And then he's like, you know, that was 20 monks. Imagine what, like, thousands of people online can do, you know, if they're all thinking of the same thing. And Dean asks a fair question. He's like, well, I mean, people believe in Santa Claus. Why don't I get hooked up for Christmas? Because you're a bad person. But also, like, one of the symbols that was written in on the wall was like a thought magnifier. So it's people, like, reading the story, looking at that image and thinking about it, was basically making it real. So, like, okay, well, we know how to stop it now. Kind of. And, you know, Sam finds out because of Dean that, you know, it's his fault that he's all itchy right now. And so, you know, you're a freaking jerk. So then we get Sam and Dean, they find Ed and Harry, and, you know, they made up a fake story about how Mordecai didn't do any of these things that were claimed from before. He actually shot himself. And the legend says to this day, he is terrified of, what is it, like a .45 caliber handgun. Yep. If he's shot with a special wrought iron round, like, it can kill the spirit.
Which is a pretty clever way to go about, like, all right, so we're dealing with something that's brought up by someone's imagination. let's just influence the actual story being told rather than, trying to come up with like a special rule or anything like that. It's more of like, if it's made from thought, if you change the thought, then eventually maybe that'll work.
And we shall see if it does. Which, before Sam and Dean show up, like, we get like some back and forth with Ed and Harry. Like, they kind of want to go back to the house, but not go back to the house because it was scary and all that. Yeah. And there was a WWBD. What would Buffy do? We then get Sam and Dean. They're hanging out, and Sam's not a fan of the laughing fisherman. As they're talking, Dean keeps pulling the cord on it. And I swear if you do that one more time. And then, okay, did that story go up? Okay, it's there. Figure by tonight it should take effect. And Dean's hand has been glued to his beer bottle.
I love that they can continue a prank war during like a near literal life or death situation.
Yeah. So we cut back to the house, and the police are investigating this sound, and it's the laughing fisherman. Yep. He is being used as a decoy to distract the police. Horrible police, by the way, which we'll get to in a bit here. So Sam and Dean go into the house, and they're getting ready to take down Mordecai. And they run into Ed and Harry again, because why not?
Yeah.
And it's at this point Mordecai shows up. So they try to shoot him, but it's not working. So they're like, hey, didn't you post that BS story that we told you about? And they're like, oh yeah, well, our servers went down. So these guns don't work. So they're like searching to see where Mordecai went. And who is that? So during this scene, there's like a cameraman or something that just like shuffles in, and you see like his shoulder, and then I'm just, what was that? What is that? So anyways, they're trying to figure out how to stop him now, because their plan failed. And Mordecai ends up attacking Sam, and then Dean shows up with his flamethrower of choice, and he just decides, Mordecai can't leave the house, so let's just burn the house down. Throws his lighter in, and it just goes up. Like, those old houses, super flammable.
A very dry part of Texas.
Yeah. And again, you get like a little bit of the, what if it changes later and he is allowed to leave the house? We'll cross that bridge when we get there. Like, a little bit of supernatural cheating with this. And then a little bit of profoundness of, Sam talking to Dean, which kind of got me thinking. He's like, it kind of makes me wonder how many things that we fought that only existed because people believe in them. Which I feel like goes into a lot of things of like, why do these certain rituals or like certain ways to kill demons and stuff like that, why do they work? Mm-hmm. And I think it's because people believe that they will work, and you get enough belief in there, and there's the power of positive thinking. So anyways, we cut to the end of the episode where Ed and Harry, they're packing up because they got a call that morning from a producer who saw their story on the Hellhound Lair website and want to like talk a movie deal and everything. And so they're heading out, and Sam's like, I got a confession to make. I was the producer that called him. Dean's like, oh, well, I put a dead fish in the back of their car. So then they call a truce for at least the next 100 miles or so. And that's kind of where we end our episodes. So I don't know how your memory's going. Hopefully better than mine. What do we know about tulpas? Is it the tulpa?
Is it the tulpa? So what we were dealing with here was kind of a westernized version of what a tulpa is. There's essentially two different types of tulpa. There is the traditional Tibetan Buddhism tulpa, and then Western kind of neo-paganism, Western occultism got a hold of what a tulpa essentially was, and kind of put a little bit of a spin or a little bit of a riff on it. The traditional Tibetan Buddhist tulpa is a thought form, essentially. in a very simplistic way, it's almost like astral projection. It's essentially you are creating a body of thought, and you're using that to help navigate certain points of like a more celestial realm or another realm as you are meditating, as you are, deep within your meditation. So it's a little less of creating an actual separate entity, but rather you're creating another form of yourself via your thought, via the power of your mind, via your meditation and your meditative practices. In the 20th century, I believe in 1927, it was kind of taken by the neo-pagan occultist groups and started to become a little bit more of like a manifestation. Essentially, if you were to take the secret that we have in modern day society, but then give it actual form, making an imaginary friend that has its own autonomy, that has its own thoughts, its own feelings.
That's a later episode.
Yeah. But you essentially are able to create that. In fact, one of the occultists that kind of coined what the phrase of tulpa said she had created a tulpa that was very similar to Friar Tuck from Robin Hood, not the Disney Robin Hood, but
Are
like.
you sure?
Yeah, I'm sure.
Oh.
But like the actual, story of Robin Hood, she had made her own Friar Tuck, and in fact, it was so realistic and had created its own life and had started doing all these autonomous things that it had to eventually be destroyed. She doesn't go into any details on how she destroyed this tulpa, but she apparently had to destroy the tulpa.
But he was a friar.
But yeah. So so we're dealing a little bit more while it has
Before we go on, if she did destroy him, hopefully she burned him.
Just burned every.
Yeah, friar.
Oh my God.
Fried Tuck. I'm tired.
That was good. I'm still annoyed. So essentially,
My work here is done.
Yeah. So essentially, what we're looking at in Supernatural is they kind of combined a little bit of both of them. There is essentially the Tibetan symbol that was supposed to enhance thought, and then threw on a little bit more of that Western spin, where it was actually able to create a fully new being that had kind of a life of its own, that was given sentience, given an ability to act by all the people focusing extra hard on it. We actually have from about 1990 to about 2000, we started to actually have really early internet forums popping up, gaining a lot of popularity in 2009 on places like 4chan, on places like Reddit, where we have what are self-described tulpamancers. And tulpamancers are going to be individuals that are trying to create a tulpa. The most popular form of tulpa that were trying to be created was in the My Little Pony community. More specifically, the bronies, the adult followers of My Little Pony, were trying to tulpamance My Little Pony into existence so that we would actually have My Little Ponies that were running around, that we had our own group.
I mean, at least they're not trying to like bring Freddy Krueger to life or something.
Yeah, exactly. The followers on a lot of the tulpamancy groups are probably numbering, which is a phrase I never thought I would say.
Yeah.
But the amount of followers really are only numbering kind of in the hundreds. So we don't have a lot, whereas comparatively to what Supernatural was dealing with, we were looking at potentially thousands of people all trying to tulpamance something into existence, which they succeeded in the show. Now, as for Supernatural's dealing with this, well, there's a lot of issues. Well, not specifically issues with it, but there's a lot of things to kind of consider and to kind of look at. And one, if you're looking at specifically the Tibetan Buddhist form, it's a very individualistic practice, and it has to be done through very intense meditation. It's not simply you have to think about it and it comes true. It's intense meditation in order to bring something to the forefront, in order to be able to project yourself into that separate body. And the same thing even goes for the neo-pagan culture, is that it's not simply, I think, and therefore it exists. And
I think, therefore it is.
Yeah, I think, therefore it is. And the symbol itself really doesn't have anything to do with tulpas. It's thought that Basically it's a Tibetan symbol, and they're saying that it's going to be able to enhance everyone's thoughts in order to create the tulpa. It's not really how that works. It still requires an intense amount of meditation, a intense amount of visualization. So everybody would have to be not just visualizing the story, they would have to be visualizing the individual person itself. So the tulpa that we see in Supernatural, every single thousands of people would have to picture him the exact same way, the exact same color of overalls, the exact same hat, the exact same face, eye color, everything about it would have to be visualized by every single person.
They could have had like an artist rendition of what Mordecai was supposed to look like.
That's a great explanation for how they would have all gotten the exact same look and the exact same feel of what that tulpa was. So, would burning down the house, get rid of the tulpa? More than likely. I mean, yeah, that would work, because you're taking away that one thing that people were, like, if we're working on Supernatural's theory, that this symbol that we have is going to allow everyone, it's going to be like the magnifying glass that heats up the rays of the sun, so to speak. Mm-hmm. If that symbol is allowing everyone's thoughts to kind of coalesce and create this creature that is now autonomous and is able to, wreak havoc and move through society, taking away that magnifying glass, in theory, is going, because again, it's going to require very intense meditation to be able to create this emanation or this thought form.
Okay.
If we take away what the magnifying glass is, that's going to allow a bunch of people who are just scrolling through 4chan or scrolling through the internet and happen across this, and they have that thought, and that just is going to get magnified. Take away the magnifying glass, and what you have are the rays of the sun again. You have kind of a scattered energy rather than a magnified version of the energy.
Sure.
So it's not so much that it kills the tulpa, or suddenly the tulpa would just basically become thoughts again, is all that it would be. It would just be floating around in the metaphoric atmosphere.
So what you're saying is Dean was right. Sam should have just shut up and removed the symbol from the wall.
If burning down the house was going to be enough to destroy, it's not, the burning down the house isn't going to be the thing that destroys the tulpa, in theory. If we're looking at this from how it was created, destroying or removing the sigil, kind of like how a devil's trap, if all you do is go, eep, it no longer works, which we're going to get to in a couple later episodes. If you're able to do that with that symbol, then theoretically it's no longer a good magnifier of that psychokinetic or telepathic or meditative energy in order to give that thought form life. Which
they kind of touched on in the episode, and Sam was just like, no, once it's created, then it takes on a life of its own, and
there it goes. And kind of my own theory behind our Friar Tuck tulpa that had to eventually be destroyed, it had to have been destroyed by the creator herself. So it was a single person that was able to create this Friar Tuck, but she was the one who then had to eventually destroy it, probably with another, essentially tearing this thing apart via meditation.
I thought you were going to say that she created another tulpa to fight that one.
Which would actually make a really good plot of a movie. Speaking of which, though, as we look at tulpas, we've seen them fairly represented in like the My Little Pony community, on Reddit and 4chan, of trying to create their own. Tulpas still did see a little bit of time in the spotlight in an Italian erotic horror film, which is based all around tulpas.
Okay.
And essentially the manifestation of an imaginary body. This one, again, is killing our good friends the tulpas. But is it applicable to real life? I mean, in Tibetan Buddhism, you still see meditations for creating thought forms and manifesting thought forms. But do they actually create thought forms? Not that we really know of. If we got maybe 1,000 more people on some of these Reddit channels, who knows? Maybe we could see some My Little Ponies running around in real life. But at the moment, they're only numbering in the hundreds. So tulpas being something that we need to be concerned about in our real day-to-day, not particularly.
So if I happen upon something in real life, odds are it's not a tulpa.
It's not a tulpa.
Okay.
Exactly.
Excellent.
Excellent. So, Matthew, what are we looking at next week?
Striga?
Oh, the Striga.
I think that's our next episode is the monster that feeds on children and makes them sick.
Well, I mean, tune in next week where we will find out if we're right.
Yeah. Again, I can't remember anything today.
Yeah. I mean, the road trips take it out of you. What can you say?
Well, until then, stay safe, buckle up, and
We got work to do.